It was a shooting weekend in Scotland, and it would change one young man's life. John Gourier was a merchant banker who had just left the army. As he and his companions enjoyed a fine day's sport, the conversation turned to politics and how Britain was turning socialist.
One day, I arrived at a shooting party with my in-laws and others, and heard them all droning on about the state of the nation over lunch, and eventually could bear it no longer, and said, it's our own effing fault. We're letting them do it. And during that night, I had not a sort of a visitation exactly, but I woke up with a blinding light in my head, saying, well, it's no good you talking like that unless you are prepared to do something.
So Gourier turned to his good friends, Ross and Norris McWhirter. The McWhirters were guest stars on the hit children's TV show Record Breakers.
What's your question?
And the biggest ship?
The biggest ship in the world is a tanker, as you might guess. It's called the Globtic Tokyo, which is a funny name.
Now, there is a chair. Now, Ross, if you like...
The show was based on the Guinness Book of Records, which the McWhirters edited. But Ross and Norris weren't just grown-up nerds who collected facts. They were also passionate campaigners for right-wing causes. They wanted a country where the individual could flourish, free from interference from the state.
And that's legal.
The McWhirters had been active conservatives for many years. They'd even stood as candidates in elections.
It has been proposed and seconded that Ross McWhirter be adopted as our prospective parliamentary candidate.
But now they were going to get involved in something much more radical, with the help of John Gourier. Gourier saw the world as a battlefield. In the army, he had experienced the paranoia of the Cold War. To Gourier, the world was locked in a titanic struggle between capitalism and communism.
As I rose through the ranks in the army, so I began to see more and more that the Soviets viewed this country as an offshore aircraft carrier, which could be used to spread their tentacles across the Atlantic and subvert the United States, which they looked upon as ripe for plundering.
While in the army, Gourier had been taught that communists didn't just use tanks and missiles to conquer their enemies. They also tried to undermine them by subverting their political institutions.
The big weapon, the sledgehammer, as far as this country was concerned, was the trade union movement.
In the 1970s, the trade unions were some of the strongest institutions in Britain. 11 million people were trade union members. By the 1970s, they were even powerful enough to challenge governments and win. The British public were fed up with industrial chaos, so they voted out Ted Heath's In 1975, a crack IRA unit was unleashing devastation across mainland Britain. The Freedom Association decided to do something about it. They put up a huge reward for information and advertised it in the press.